So if you've got a Nexx Specter, you're probably going to want this. They just released their new brass chassis, and man, is it shiny. It looks really good, though. I love the mill. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but it's like milled out. You can see the brass around the edges. It's very cool. So we're going to weigh these out. We're going to install it on the car, and then we're going to weigh the car to see the balance. You can see right now we've got, this is not ideal, it's just what we had, but we've got a 1/4 ounce or 7 gram weight up here, which is up high just so that we can make weight. We have to be 160 grams with the body. Altogether, the car has to be 160 grams for our super stock class and stock class. We're running this one in super stock, but we're going to go ahead and remove this 7 grams. And notice we had to put it on the side over here to help add weight. And I don't know if that, I mean, I'm sure a lot of it has to do with our ESC and things like that. But one of my concerns with this is, I mentioned it before, but chassis flex, potentially, imbalance in the chassis flex, but I don't think the chassis is going to flex too much. So that's less of a concern. But with the brass, the concern is going to be more actual weight and balance, right? Like it's going to be much heavier on this side than this side. So we'll see just how much. And yeah, now we did find out that the AGFRC servo, I believe it's the A06 CLS, is actually, it'll sit down into this cutout. It's a little bit larger, and it'll actually allow you to set it down into the cutout. So maybe that's something we'll have to do at some point, is get that servo, drop it down in there. That'll help lower our center of gravity a little bit. So that'll be nice. But that's what we found out. So I guess that was their original intention, for that servo to be able to drop down in there and get you a lower center of gravity. So not horrible. Again, just when you go to the brass, I worry on how imbalanced that's going to be. You know, it's clearly weighted more to one side. So we'll see. All right, so we're able to pull off the old chassis, just basically pull out all the bottom screws. They're all the same size with the exception of the servo saver. The servo saver screw is a little bit longer. But yeah, we were able to just pop our ESC. We had glued down, not glued, but taped down, and everything else just came off. So pretty easy. We're going to go ahead and weigh this. Let's make sure we completely zero out here. Looks like we're at 6.18, 6.19, 6.18 grams. And then our brass, looks like we are right at 32.82, 32.83, 32.82. All right, so 32.82, which is going to give us a difference of 26.64 grams. So basically 26.5 grams heavier. I mean, we knew it was going to be heavier, but just in case you're wanting to know the actual differences. 32.82, 6.18, so 26.64. And then we're going to go ahead and put this back together, and we will get the rear pod done as well. So let's put the front chassis together first. And be sure to remember to Loctite these. Most of these screws already came with a little bit of Loctite, but it never hurts just to dab just a little tiny bit more, and make sure you're going Loctite on anything that's metal to metal. So the screw's metal, and where you're going is aluminum, then you probably want to Loctite it. And everything on this car is aluminum. There's no real plastic, so you don't have to worry about melting, the plastic, because Loctite into plastic will melt it. So just be careful on your links here. Those are really, when you put your screws back in, those are really kind of the only place where I think that there's plastic. Everything else is pretty much just aluminum. And never over tighten. Obviously, just finger tight everything, 2 fingers, and that's enough. You don't need to crank down on it. You'll strip it very easily. And especially if you're Loctiting, you don't really need to get too crazy because the Loctite will hold it. And while you're taking your car apart, it's always a good time to just check kind of your other linkages. And if, you know, our link here, apparently we never adjusted it for tightness and binding. And so it's a little tight. You can see it's just kind of sticking. And I show this in another video, but you can actually just take some pliers and just kind of gently squeeze. And that'll loosen it up. A little more here. Just make sure you don't break it. You don't want to squeeze too hard. You don't want to slip off while you're doing it. But there you go. Much better. Now we'll just finish up and get our front in. When you're testing your servo saver, you want to make sure it's tight, but not too tight. You should be able to hold your servo horn here, and it should have some good pressure. But you should be, as you turn it, it should have a little bit of lift, just a little bit, not a crazy amount, just a little. But you don't want slop, right? So just hold your servo horn, try to turn it, and you should. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm not pushing too hard, but there's just a tiny bit of lift between the two pieces of the servo saver in there. Okay, just a little bit. Again, you can adjust it according to what you want, but that's how I do it. All right. Let's go ahead and we're going to get our battery in. We're going to do the pods separate. So we're going to weigh stuff out like this, and then we'll do the pod and we'll weigh it again. I'm going to get my battery and my body. We'll just do a regular old weigh. Oh, wait, we forgot our little, we had a little Velcro piece in the back of the chassis here to help hold our battery tight. We just use kind of the hard side of the Velcro, and that just kind of tightens up our battery a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and put that back in there. Yeah. Okay. Now our battery is pushed forward. See, it kind of stays forward better now versus sliding around. We also have a piece of Velcro. I don't know if you can see it sticking through, but there's a little piece of soft Velcro on the top here. Again, that little bit of Velcro on the top and then that hard Velcro on the bottom kind of helps keep the battery pushed forward and keeps it nice and tight in there. All right. So we're 150.8 without the body. We throw our body on there. We're at 179.45. Now, 160 is kind of your goal, right? Unless you're trying to go over for some reason, but really you want your car to be as light as possible. Complete. If you can get it down to 100 grams, that's what you prefer, right? But that's why there's a rule of 160. But you want to get that, most important, you want to get that weight as low as possible. You want the weight to be center of gravity towards the bottom as much as possible. So if you could take all 160 grams and throw it into the, basically over the axles, that's what you would try to do. You know, put it all low in the body plate and have everything else super light. That would be ideal. So being at 179, we're now over that. But again, the ideal situation is having the highest ratio of weight towards the bottom. So even though our brass chassis puts us over our weight limit, like we were at, let me look, I might have a record here. Hold on. I should have weighed it before. I don't know why I didn't. We were right at 160. Our total weight before on this chassis was 153. And then I added that 7 gram weight. So we were literally at 160. But the problem was adding the weight was up high. It was up here, right? We had our weight up here. Also, we have all this weight, our ESC. Ideally, we'd probably decase our ESC, get a little weight out of it. But all this weight up high, and then of course our body at 160 is still not as, even if we're as light as possible, is still not as good as having, you know, 100 and, what are we at? 179. So we're actually 18, basically 19 grams over what we were. But if you were to take a percentage and have like a center line of the car, way more percentage of our weight is low now, like way more. So that's going to really help the handling. That's the whole point of brass chassis, is to help the car stick. put the weight as low as possible. So I don't even know if we really want to add this guy, seeing how we're already so high. The nice thing about having the brass in the back is it helps keep the rear end a little more planted. But that's going to put us, let's see where we're at here. If we add that, looks like we're going to be like right at 185 with that. Well, we will be removing the carbon pod, but that's probably not even a gram, I'll be honest. So the brass pod plate by itself, right at 6, look like. Yeah, 5.97. So 5.97, removing a gram, adding the 5.97. We're really adding 5 grams. So we'll be at basically 184 and a half. But again, it's good weight, right? It's weight down low. I don't know. Maybe we'll run it tonight. We're actually going racing tonight. We'll race it tonight with just this. We'll see how it handles and talk to some people and see if maybe we should add the rear pod. In mod, because you're going so fast, I think the extra weight, you have extra power, you can have extra motors, right? We're doing super stock. In mod, you could have a 7500 in there if you want. Hell, you could have a 10K if you wanted. But and the extra weight wouldn't hurt you, but it's putting good weight low. So you would definitely want the brass pod in mod. But right now in super stock, I don't know if we do. We really want to reduce the weight if we can in some way. If I could get this body, how much does this body weigh? 28 grams. If I could take 10 grams off this body, that'd be a beautiful thing. I don't think we're gonna though. We could put a Lexan wing on here. That would lighten it up. There's some stuff we could definitely do. Like I said, decasing the ESC would help quite a bit. But really, you don't have to nickel and dime it. It was just fun that we were at exactly 160 before. I was hoping that once I removed that weight, got this brass chassis on there, we'd be close to like 170. But again, not a big deal. I'd rather have the good weight than, perfectly low weight. All right, so let's go ahead and balance this thing. Let's do a weight balance, and we will see how the car is balanced right now. And I hope it's fairly balanced. I have a feeling it's not going to be, which means you would have to add weight to balance it out, or remove weight on the side that you're trying to remove weight from. But I don't know how we're going to do that right now. If we are super heavy on the side, again, we could decase our ESC because it is on the heavy side, or switch it to the other side, but then that puts the ESC up high. We like the ESC down low. Well, let's see. All right, so we'll go ahead and weigh it up. We got everything zeroed out. When you're weighing these guys, you want to make sure that you're as center as possible on each piece of each scale. We don't have one of those fancy scales, so we're just going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. You want to be as centered as possible, and as centered as possible. And then we're going to throw our numbers into a spreadsheet. So here we've got 44.33, 43.20, 45.84, and 46.32. That's going to give us a 50%, 50.4 on the right, and a 49.5 on the left. So we're basically 0.5% different right to left, and then 51.2 on the front and 48.7 on the back. So basically another 1% difference front and back, maybe 1.5. So 0.5% this way, 1.5 this way. We're a little heavy, front heavy. Part of that has to do with we ended up having to put a heavy amount of glue on the front of our body. So our body is a little bit front heavy right now. But it does seem to be a little bit heavier on this side. But again, it's like 0.5%, so it's pretty much irrelevant, which really surprises me, actually. We'll go ahead and do another, make sure we're all zeroed out. Let's go ahead and try another set of numbers here. All right, 42.66, 44.94, 43.60, and 48.55. That's going to put us even closer. So now we're 50.7 and 49.2. So still half a percentage apart, and then 51.2 and 48.7. So again, not much different the second scale around. And yeah, it's actually pretty balanced. I think we can definitely do a little bit of work on our body to help balance the weight in the front, because again, that's very front heavy. We'll go ahead and do one weigh-in without the body. Just want to make sure we're zeroed out. All right. 37.00, 35.66, 38.45, and 40.3. So now we are definitely more right side heavy. It's a 51% and a 49%. So it's a 1% difference, and then 52 and 47. So actually our body was helping level out some of that front weight. Our front's a little bit heavier than the back, about 2% difference. So not a huge difference though. Nothing that can't be fixed through, just kind of shaving our body. On the inside, you can see our body's a mess. We're full of glue, and it's not ideal, that's for sure. So maybe when we get a new body, you can try to shave it down and get a little bit more balance out of it. The car itself seems pretty well balanced. It is just a tad bit heavier on this side. I think we are definitely going to get the servo that fits down in there. Maybe we'll order one tonight. And yeah, we can throw that in there and show you what that's about. Either way, we're really loving this car. It's a fantastic car. We're running it in super stock, as I said, and it seems to hang with the best of them. The biggest thing holding it back is my driving ability. So yeah, if you've got a Nexx Specter, I think you definitely will want the brass chassis. The rear brass pod, if you're running mod, then definitely get the rear brass pod for mod. But for super stock, I don't know if you need it. I have heard from some others that they really like the rear brass pod. It's pretty cheap, so I mean, if you want to experiment, I'd say pick it up. It's probably worth it to experiment with, maybe even in super stock. I just don't like going over that weight. I even considered maybe underneath this battery here, if we pull the chassis back apart, we can take some weight off by drummeling the back where the battery sits. Now, that might not be ideal, or maybe milling it. Maybe we can find somebody that's got a mill that can actually go in and mill out just a little spot for the battery. I just don't want to weaken the chassis, but if you basically took a little bit out here, that would lower the weight a little bit. We also can change all of our screws to titanium. If anybody knows Ajay, he actually was in one of the other videos where he did a PN 2.5 to 3.0 conversion. He talked to us about that. He also has a Specter, and he mentioned, changing all the screws to titanium, maybe changing out your upper spring to the PN upper spring. It's a little bit less bulky. You can also, remove your servo tray that sits above your servo. I don't know how much that's going to save you, but maybe a little bit. Just little things like that. I mean, we also have this bulkier front bumper on, but we really like this bumper a lot. You could also try to figure out a way to hold the battery in without using these doors. Maybe run a rubber band or something that would be a little bit lighter. You lose the screw, lose the door. That would definitely lighten you up a little bit. But overall, I mean, again, fantastic car. Brass chassis, definitely worth it. Check it out. If any of this helps you, appreciate the like, the subscribe, the share, the notification bell so you know new videos come up. And why don't you comment down below, badass brass. Put badass brass in the comments below if you watched the video all the way till the end. All right, guys, get out there, build something, run your cars, crash them, smash them, bash them, but don't break the expensive parts.